Hello, I'm Bill. This time on the Garage Guy, we're going to be removing that thing that keeps you warm in the winter, a heater core. So the first thing I need to do is remove this kick panel. It's being held in with 4 Phillips screwdriver bits. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 right there. I just need to remove those, and this plastic kick panel will come right out. That way that will give me good access to the rest of the stuff that I need to do. And there's little screws that are attached to every single little point. I say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here in the front. I'm sure there's more in the back, and that's the first thing I do is remove this big black shroud. Okay, so here I am, just getting ready to pull the shroud out just now. There was 2 screws that held it on back here that were surprisingly 7mm screws. I thought there were going to be 8, but they were 7. There was 1 there and 1 there, and now the whole thing just comes right out after you undo the screws on the top. So now I got the shroud out of the way. And pulling the shroud out, one thing I noticed right away is that there is moisture in here. So definitely looks like that is part of the problem. The heater core is leaking. So now, to get better access to this baffle, so I can pull it out a lot easier, I'm going to remove a couple of the bolts out of the dash. I'm going to take out these 2 bottom screws on the dash here. There's 1 there, 1 there. I'm going to see how loose it's going to get, and that might give me enough room to pull the dash forward a little bit and to get that baffle out once I take out the screws. So this is what I did. It's actually really simple. I don't know why you wouldn't want to do this. There's only 4 screws up here on the upper part of the dash, and they're right here by the vents. So there's a screw there, there's a screw there, there's a screw there, and a screw there on the top part. So I removed that screw, removed that screw, removed that screw, and what I did is I created a wedge right here that gives me some extra space so I can actually push this up without having any help. Okay, I'm going to skip ahead a little bit to show you what it looks like with it off first so you get a better idea of where these screws are at, because I could not film this with the screws in there. It was even really tough to get pictures in there because they're in some really odd places. Another thing to realize is inside of the baffle and the top of it is this insert that has hoses attached to it, so you just can't really yank on this thing because this is inside of there as well. So once you get the screws out, all 6 screws out, it'll be much easier to get the baffle off once you have the dash loosened, pried forward, and then you'll be able to pull it down. So there's 6 screws all together. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that you can get to from underneath pretty easily. And then on the top, that's the tricky part. They're both accessible through that hole, but they are tough to get through. This one you can get to. See, it's still hard to get a picture of it. This one you can get to through the dash. It's right here on the top with that little hole in the glove compartment. And the other one is somewhere on the top. Oh, it's over here, way in the corner. That one is actually easier to get to just by putting your hand up underneath the dash and forward. That I'll show you here in a second as I'm actually removing it. So the stupid illustration only shows a screw right there, but there's a screw there and over there. The easiest way to get to that one is actually just stuck my hand up inside of the dash. You know, you can see her, well, you can't see it now because I put down the light. But you can get your hand up in here this way with your little 1/4-inch drive with a 1/4-inch socket head on it. Now I got all 4 out, and now, oh look! Now look at this bad boy, now it comes right out. So you can see it's a little wet in here. Obviously there's something going on with this core. Oh yeah, it looks like there's a leak right there in the corner. Okay, I have the clamps removed from the heater core. I got the clamps removed, or the hoses removed. This is just a simple clamp that you can use a pair of pliers, or actually channel locks I believe work better, to clamp them down and pull them back. This is actually still the original heater hoses in here as well. They have the original dates, and I made sure I marked them because they're two different sizes and you don't want to put them in the wrong place. So I marked this one the driver's side, or the lower side. So you see one's lower than the other, and it's closer to the driver's side. So got both of those out. Make sure you drain your radiator a little bit and save it and recover it and or dispose it following your state's regulations. Wink, wink. Just make sure you don't dump it down the street. So now I'm ready to pull the core. I got the heater hoses removed, ready just to pull the core out. It's held in by 4 screws. It's on a bracket. There's a screw here, another screw on the top, and the same thing on the other side over here. These screws, once again, mysteriously are not metric. They are 1/4 inch. So I'm going to pull these out and then remove the heater core. There she blows. Okay, it wasn't too bad with a little bit of manipulation. Without putting any pressure on it, I was able to pull this guy out, and it did help a ton that I had the dash out. I actually have it right here. I have it kind of wedged, so it gives me about another inch or so of clearance, and I really don't think I would have got that out easily without these 2 screws pulled out. So do not try to pull this thing out without minimally pulling out these 2 bottom screws out of your dash. This is the second time this heater core has been replaced. I can tell because the baffle is cracked and super glued back together, because I'm assuming the person that replaced it before just kind of pulled on it really hard and it broke because they didn't get the top screws out. They didn't realize that they were there. So here's the heater core pulled out of the vehicle, and I want to show you something. Basically, the way this thing is attached together, it has some copper tubes, and every place where there's an attachment point, you'll see the silver stuff. There's silver, silver, silver here. That's solder. Very, very brittle metal. So if you put any flexing on these tubes where these joints are at, right here, where it's connected, down inside of here, or even where the top is connected, you could crack that solder joint and cause a leak. That is what's happened to this one, because you can see right here an example of what a solder break looks like here on the top. Now this was because there's too much pressure put on these big long tubes, and it cracked right here. Now that in itself is not necessarily going to cause a leak, but it'll put more pressure down here and here where these things are going to be flexing a lot more. They're not going to be the space where they originally started and where they were soldered on there. So notice how there's a bunch of green stuff around this copper tube, and I'm sure that's where it's leaking out right now. So that's why it's really important not to monkey fist this thing in here. I know there's other people that tell you, hey, you can just wiggle this in and it'll fit fine, but I can tell you from experience, because this is the second time that this heater core has been replaced, do not use that method. Do not force it into the dash. Pull that dash as far forward as possible to avoid those solder joints from cracking and leaking again in the future. Now, you can see the heater core is almost in. I could have used a bottle jack, actually wanted to use a bottle jack, but I don't have it. It's in a different vehicle that is not here right now, so I don't have my bottle jack with me. So I just kind of created this wedge with a 2x4 to get this thing up pretty high. You can see this is how much higher the dash is, and it's actually pushed out and forward. And that's how I was able to get the heater core in there that far without monkey fisting. I didn't put any pressure on it. I just guided it in there and was able to push it in with the tubes inside there without forcing it and putting pressure on it. I was going to pull it back out and show you how I got this back in and out and how easy it is, but I really don't want to put this heater core through any more stress by pulling it out and reinstalling it again, because I still had a little tiny bit of room. I had to pull this up really hard. 2 people would make this job very simple, to be pulling and lifting this dash. But I'm just here by myself in the garage, so I had to come up with the 2x4 method. So now that I have it in here, up inside there, without monkey fisting it and wiggling it, it will go in there pretty easy. I'm going to have to use 2 hands because, well, it's kind of going in there. But you see, I don't want to put too much pressure on it. I'm going to use 2 hands and guide this in here nice and gently, and then it will be in properly without cracks on the solder joints. So hopefully this one will last more than 5 years. So got the baffle in now. Actually, you just got to screw it on. I got to put some more screws on there. Put those screws back on. You can see that this light is dangling here. I actually had to take it off to get the proper clearance to get the radiator core back in there. It's in there good and tight, it seems like. Put the screws in. I'll be able to reach in there pretty good. You can see up in here. You can actually see my hand. I can get my hand up in here really nice because I got all that space because I have my piece of wood in here holding up my dash and pushing it out. So just taking those few screws out gives me a ton of space. So that way you don't have to primarily try to fit stuff through that access in your glove box. So I can actually just put my hand up in here and get this back screw a lot easier than trying to reach with an extension and stuff with that 1/4" socket. So I'm gonna put on my screws and see how she goes. So I had the radiator core sitting overnight, started the vehicle and drove it around for a bit, let it sit overnight, drove it around again today for a little bit because I wanted to make sure there were no leaks. So there's no leaks. I went ahead and put the baffle and everything back on this morning. Alright, well here she is all put back together. Still need to clean out the floor, but the dash is back together, and the baffle and that cover are back on down here as well. Now, if you were to try to do this and do it the way that I recommend, I would say it would take about 2 to 3 hours. I would not try to blow through this and get it done really fast. The reason why I can't give you an accurate timeline is because I did a lot of extra things that I was just experimenting with. I tried removing some extra parts in the engine, for example, to see if that would make things easier. Like I completely took out the blower motor. I took out the reserve tank, for the overflow tank for the hot water heaters, for the hot water heater, the radiator core, so I can get access to the bottom screws of this to see if that would give me better clearance down there. And it really didn't. So I took a bunch of extra time experimenting with different things, taking out extra screws of the dash. I did find one thing helpful, like I completely disassembled the glove box cover. So when I took the cover off, I took all this trim out of it as well and removed all these screws. And what that actually helped do was give the dash a little bit more flexibility, and it bent easier, because when I put this back on, I still didn't have the baffle inside of here assembled yet. I noticed it was more stiff. So if you want to do some extra stuff, I would take all these screws off around this trim, take off the door of the glove box, and it actually gave the dashboard a little bit more flexibility. One thing to be cautious about is, you know, if your dashboard's getting a little bit older and brittle, it's starting to develop some cracks, don't be surprised if you make some cracks worse. Like, for example, I don't think that crack there was that bad when I first started. So once again, you know, I would recommend taking out the dash screws to give you more flexibility inside of here to get that core in and out without damaging the core. A crack in the dash, I think, is a way better compromise than putting a crack in that heater core and having it leak again a few years later. Well, I certainly hope I never have to replace one of these ever again inside of this type of vehicle. We'll see you next time on The Garage Guy.